Hey everybody. So far we've been looking at a lot of ways to build illustration out of simple shapes, but Illustrator actually has a lot of tools for making illustration when the shapes are maybe less geometric and a little bit more organic. And we're going to look at the first of those tools in this session today, and that is the Curvature Tool. If you're familiar with Illustrator at all, then you probably know about the pen tool. Right underneath our direct selection arrow, we have the pen tool, and the Curvature Tool is right below that. It looks the same as the pen tip icon, but has this curving line coming out from it. The first thing we want to do to get started is to create a new document. So we're going to go File, New. And I want to use these settings that I've used before, but I want you to make sure you've got the same ones selected this time. So we're going to go to Print and choose Letter. We're going to set our measurements to inches. We're going to make sure we've got a landscape orientation. So our width should be 11, our height should be 8.5. In our color mode, remember, you might need to open up your advanced options here. We're going to choose RGB. We're going to choose a high pixels per inch, 300 pixels per inch for our document. Just one artboard is fine, and we can click Create. And from here, let's maybe go ahead and start off by saving this document. We're going to call it Curvature Tool V1 and hit enter. Click OK. And then we're going to load the template that you have hopefully already downloaded. So you're going to go find it in whatever folder you placed it into, or maybe your downloads folder. Remember that when we're loading a template, we go to File, Place. This time I'm going to find that template in my Resource Files folder. It's this one right here that says Curvature Tool V1. After selecting that, then I have the option to tick this box for template that I want to use. It's going to be especially good this time to have it just locked down in the middle of our artboard and in the background, and with the opacity slightly reduced for drawing over top. So make sure you click the box for template, and then you can hit place. And you can see we've got these icons here ready for us to trace over top of using our curvature tool. So we're starting with this one that maybe is like a couple drops of water separating, or something you would see in a retro lava lamp. I don't know exactly, but we're going to do our tracing here. So click on the curvature tool, maybe Control plus a couple of times to zoom in on this part of the drawing. Default when we're opening up new documents is that we've got a fill set to white. Let's go ahead and before we even start mapping out a shape with our curvature tool, let's set that fill to no fill. We can leave the stroke black and 1 point. So we're actually going to start by making this circle, and obviously, we could use the ellipse tool pretty easily to make this circle, but it's also surprisingly easy and accurate to draw something like this with the curvature tool, and it gives us a good sense of how the curvature tool works and how to apply it then to more complicated shapes. So we're going to click once here to drop our first anchor point for drawing out our curve, and then we're going to click at kind of a north, east, southwest path around here. And you might notice that by the time we've clicked our second point, it's just connecting them with a straight line, which seems kind of weird for a curvature tool. But as soon as I start to move, hopefully you can see that there is a blue line that starts to map out the path of the curve that we're creating. And we're going to click once at the bottom here. And now you can see the curve starting to form there. As we keep on going around, even some of these old places are going to shift a little bit as we pick out more points. And to close off the shape, we're just going to click back to the anchor point that we started with. And V, right? And we've got something that it really would be kind of hard to tell if we pull this off to the side. If that was just sitting there, you might be hard pressed to tell that it's not perfectly a circle. Obviously, it isn't quite, but it's pretty close. So Control Z to get that back over where we want it. And then we're going to start trying to draw out this next shape. So click back to the curvature tool, and we might think, okay, well, we started at the top and just did 4 points around. This part is kind of like a circle. Maybe we want to start at the top and start working our way around. But then, it's a little bit harder to tell what should be going on in here. And one of the main ways that people start to understand and get good practice with the curvature tool is to think about anytime you're kind of at a peak, like the farthest out you're going before you start to turn back. That's a good place to drop an anchor for the curvature tool. So we're going to try putting one right here. Then this is kind of obviously a peak. And you can see my line is not really going where I want it to go, but maybe we've got another one over here, and then start treating this like a circle again. And by the time we've gotten this far in, we maybe have a right to be worried about how this is going. I'm going to go ahead and finish this off. Right? And there are some things about this that I really like, and there are some other parts of it that I really, really don't like. So one of the things that we can do is just finish the shape, trying to drop as few anchor points as possible while getting things basically right. And then come back in and add some more points in places where things are not quite doing what we want. So I'm actually going to zoom in even a little bit more here. And I'm going to just click, right? You can see my cursor has a little plus that's saying I'm going to put another anchor point here. If you click, I'm going to click and drag to make my curve match a little bit better in this particular spot. And you'll notice that over to the right, it's also matching a little bit better over there as well. So I'm going to drop that. And then I'm going to come in here. This part wasn't moving the way I wanted to. I'm going to pull that over and drop another point right there. And then try the same thing over here on the other side. Kind of pull that in, pull this down, and we've got something that's a lot better. We can control click to just kind of clear things out and just take a look without the blue kind of distracting us from what's going on. And hopefully you notice that even with the extra anchor points in there, there's a smoothness to the way things are drawn with the curvature tool that's pretty hard to replicate with a lot of other tools. It's really working hard. The program is working hard kind of behind the scenes to take your input in the terms of anchor points and really fight to maintain the quality of the curves being really smooth and uniform. So that actually worked pretty well for us there. You might have had less success. So I'm going to back up through this all the way back to before I started that anchor point. And I'm going to try just kind of looking for some different places to drop the anchor points. And I'm going to kind of just spread out from the top a little bit over to some of these edges. I'm going to start right there. And then drop a few more anchor points around the middle here. Because of what I know about how this drawing worked out before and kind of the results that I got that I don't want this time. Things are looking pretty weird up here at the top, but you'll notice as soon as I say I'm going to close it off, things get a lot better for me there around the top. And so we've got something maybe slightly better than what we had to begin with last time. What we want to try here is, instead of adding more anchor points, another thing that we can do is just take the ones that we have and move them around a little bit. So I'm going to kind of pull where this is weird between these two. I'm going to try to kind of pull them a little bit closer together and start kind of working my way through this, kind of just adjusting things as far as I can to improve kind of the path that I'm on without messing up the path somewhere else. So it looks like I have a lot of flexibility here to kind of move this around to different spots. When things are getting off on this side, and then I can kind of pull back. And so this ends up being a little bit of like a guess and check, just kind of pulling things around, trusting that the curvature tool really is doing a lot of work for me to keep my curve looking good. When I'm happy with what's going on this side, then I should be able to, because of the symmetry in the shape, kind of just try to make things match a little bit over here on the other side in terms of where I've got these points dropped, right? So I'm going to kind of just slide these things around a little bit so they match up with what I was doing on the other side. And now you can see we might have used the same amount ultimately of anchor points. If we can control click, we can see we've got, again, pretty nice curves that we can be happy with. That might have been slightly faster in that second way of doing things. And it just, you have to learn. You have to learn as you use the curvature tool where the best places are going to be to drop anchor points. But always keeping in mind that you have some flexibility to adjust them later if that is what they need. All right, one shape down and one to go. So hopefully you notice as we move on to this next shape that one of the main differences here between these two is that this time we're looking at a shape that is not all curves. There are some pointy places on this shape. And we're going to start with this middle piece again. It's a little bit simpler. And I'll show you when we get here what you do with your curvature tool in order to add a point to your shape. So I'm going to start over here on this edge, maybe up a little bit at this spot, kind of jump in to that bend right there. And when I get up here to the top, I'm just going to double click. The double click, right, tells the curvature tool to make a point. And then I'm going to pop out here, come around to the bottom, and then close that out. All right, so that didn't quite do what I wanted it to do down along here. So I'm going to try just to pull these existing anchor points around a little bit to get the shape I want. And I'm not really worried about things being perfect in this. So just adjust it a little bit, and we need to not get too carried away and move on to the other parts of the shape, right? So yeah, 5 anchor points, and for this one, to make it be a point, we just double click. We also could start at a place that's a point, and if we want to do that, we just need to be careful to double click when we start. And then we already know about this point. We just told it by double clicking. This is going to be not a smooth curve, but a point on my curve. And then I'm going to start dropping points around here at places that I think will work. You can see stuff is getting a little bit off track, but you just have to trust that as you continue on, you will eventually find your way on things like this. So again, we're at a point, so double click. And a couple more here. You can see things got a little bit messy over there, but we can always come back and slide things around to fix those later. We're gonna go in, out. And here at the bottom, I don't know, we might want to add a couple across the bottom here just to be safe, and then finish things off. Notice up here, if I am thinking, oh, this is a point, I need to double click. If I double click, oh, it switches to a curve. So actually, when you're closing off a shape, all you have to do is click. It remembers already from when we started that this is going to be a point. But if you double click and it changes to a curve, you can just double click it again to change it back. And that's true for any point along the way. You can come to any of these anchor points and double click them to turn them into a point, and double click again to turn it back. Yeah, so let's just do some quick adjustments of these to try to pull them into a place that feels like it's going to work. Let's see, got a spot down here. Pull that way down. This one in. Looks like a lot of these, they just need to be closer together towards the bottom. Yeah, so that was fairly quick work on that. Yeah, so there's, we've got our second shape done. All right, over on this third shape, we're adding kind of another layer of how to deal with stuff with the curvature tool. We've got a shape where lines are maybe intersecting or overlapping. That's going to be something we're going to have to deal with. We also have places where what we're drawing is switching from straight to curved. So that's another thing that we're going to want to try to deal with here in this. So I'm going to start down here at the bottom. Remember, I want this to be a point, not a curve. So I'm going to double click here to start my shape. And then when I get out over here to the left to about the end of where it seems like things are straight, I'm going to double click again. That's going to make a straight line between those two spots. And then next, I'm going to come out to kind of the edge of where I see this turning right here, and I'm going to drop a point and come up and double click again. So now I'm ready for another straight line up to the top. Double click to end my straight line, point in the middle for a curve, another double click to end my curve and switch back to doing straight lines. I'm going to try to get this as close as I can to the middle, double click, and back down to the bottom to close things out. Remember, only need to single click at the end because we don't want to switch this from a point to a curve. And maybe we're going to try to line that up in the middle even a little bit more than we had it before. Not worrying about it too much. Okay, so if I want to come over here and draw out the other side of this shape, I have a little bit of a problem there because when I come to, I think, like even if I'm not on this shape, I come right here, like I'm going to click to draw out my shape. And then maybe I come here and like double click. And then I'm starting something new. So I need to back up a couple steps there. I can't click here to start something new because it always thinks I'm trying to do something with this anchor point that's already in place. So one technique that I have, right, is I can come to about this object. I can say, I want to lock that down. And we've seen how to lock things over in the layers panel before. You can see that it's locked here in the layers panel now. So maybe we'll come back and look at that later, but now I can click on this spot to start a new straight line right there. And it actually is starting my next part of this shape. So corner curve, double click to start my straight line, double click to end that straight line, one click for the corner curve, and close that off. All right, so when we are worried about overlapping things, then sometimes we just need to lock them down. And actually, it's going to help us to do that again. So I'm going to lock that selection also. And then maybe I'll try to get this, like the paper inside this folder all in one go. So I'm going to start down here. It's pointy, so start with a double click. And then top of the curve, bottom of the curve, double click to switch to a straight line, double click, curve, curve, double click, curve, curve, double click, double click. You get the idea. All right. So again, we're not aiming for perfection in this. We're just trying to get things built. You see, stuff is not lining up 100% perfectly, like right there. We might build these in a slightly different way if we weren't in the middle of trying to practice the curvature tool. Let's see. So a couple other things. I think we have all of our curvature tool skills pretty well down. But we also have some other things that we can incorporate into this. notice that when I tried to select this whole book, I was only able to select the shape for the paper in the middle. That's because everything is locked. So I could come over here to the layers and I could unlock those here, or I can go back to this little lock pop out and say that I actually want to unlock everything. So right underneath where we lock, we can unlock things. Now I can select all of this and Shift M, or just click over here for my shape builder tool. If I want to do some coloring this in. So maybe pick like a light gray for my paper and drop those in those two spaces. Come back for maybe a brown for these other parts. Let's see, we can kind of connect those together. And then we're down to 3 pieces here. That works out all right. Back to our selection tool. Actually don't want to have any stroke on these, so I'm going to come in and take the stroke off. A little bit of glitchiness there in the corner, but that's all right. Not really worried about that right now. Or maybe we should worry about it a little bit. So we can zoom in a little bit here, come down. Got this spot where things are not quite doing what we maybe wish they would. We can go to our direct selection and kind of just pull at everything. But just like one of these anchors, maybe we can pull it down a little bit to overlap a little bit more. Yeah, I don't know if we fixed much at all right there, but good enough. So this is what I would like you to do next. We have 2 more shapes still down here. Using the curvature tool, I'd like you to go ahead and draw those out. Maybe coming back with the shape builder tool to do some combining like we have in the last shape. But yeah, practice your curvature tool, and when you're done, fill them in with some colors. So you can use a shape builder to do some coloring of things at the end. Go ahead and color these ones back up at the top too, and then post your results. Export your JPEG and post your results in our class.